Erstklassisch mit Mischke, der musikalische Podcast des Hamburger Abendblatts.
Schönen guten Tag zu einer neuen Folge. Ich bin tatsächlich wieder in meinem Arbeitszimmer. Mein Gast ist relativ weit weg diesmal, nämlich in Baltimore. Auf der anderen Seite des Atlantik ist es eine Dirigentin, die man nicht vorstellen muss, aber trotzdem vorstellen sollte, weil sie so wahnsinnig viel gemacht hat und so wahnsinnig viel macht. Wenn ich das alles zusammenkriege, sie wurde in New York geboren, sie ist Chefin gewesen in Baltimore beim Baltimore Symphony, sie ist beim Ravinia Festival in Chicago, sie hat das Wiener Radiosymphonieorchester bis 2025, glaube ich, verlängert kürzlich. Sie war in Sao Paulo beim Symphony Orchestra, sie dirigiert Gott weiß wo mit einem riesigen Repertoire und deswegen bin ich auch sehr froh, dass das geklappt hat mit dem Termin, den wir jetzt haben. Und um es mal aufzulösen, die Dirigentin ist Marin Alsop und wir sprechen bei diesem Interview auf Englisch. Das ist am einfachsten. Ich denke, das geht alles so in Ordnung. Und erstmal jedenfalls, hello Marin Alsop, and thank you very much for having me, and I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you. Es freut mich sehr, hier zu sein. Yeah, it's great to be here, and thank you for interviewing me.
Yes. We always start here with, you can choose whether you want an easy question first or a complicated one. It's up to you.
All questions are complicated and easy, so you pick.
Okay. This first story you always come across when you look when I looked up your life and your career, sooner or later, mostly sooner, you'll find the story about you've been listening to Bernstein in a concert when you were 9 and experiencing him as a conductor. And you said, I want to do this as well. That's really known and often told. But I wondered, when was the first time not hearing someone and thinking, I could do this as well? But when was the first time that you really regretted becoming a conductor?
Regretted?
Yes.
Oh, I've never regretted it. Or you mean the first time I really felt the commitment to do it? I never regretted it, I don't think.
The first time it's been really hard then, and really much tougher than you'd expected.
Well, I think that has been a theme of my life, that it was not an easy path, especially because there was no clear, for a young conductor, regardless of gender, there's no real clear path. If you do this, then this will happen. Or it's very much part of a creative process that you have to generate yourself to create your own destiny. And, there are schools, of course, for conducting, but there's no guarantee that if you get even the highest education that you will then succeed, because there's so many factors, chemistry and good fortune and these kinds of things. And of course, your innate talent. I think that it was a very difficult and long journey to success. It seems very fast when you look back, but it was painstaking. So every step of the way had its own challenges. But I think the important factor for me was that I never regretted making that choice, even though it was very difficult.
Can you remember when you experienced your first concert, when you felt really at home on the position of conducting? Because you started out as playing violin, and then you got it in your head that conducting might be nice as well, or even nicer maybe. And yes. I guess there must have been an evening when you felt, okay, this is it.
Oh, but I think as soon as I stepped in front of the orchestra, I felt, oh, this is what I want to do. It feels like home. It feels natural. It feels like the right thing. Of course, playing violin, I felt a real attachment to that and a real naturalness, but conducting felt even more me. And so I think from the minute I started conducting as a teenager, even, I felt, even though I don't know what I'm doing, this feels like the direction I want to go, and I feel at home. So I never doubted that that sort of innate draw that conducting had for me.
Did you conduct musicians of your age when you started, or were they older and more frightening because they were older?
Both. I would talk my friends into playing for me, but then, of course, my parents were professional musicians, so they would play. I wasn't afraid of them, but sometimes they would talk some of their friends into playing, and that was a little more scary. But I have to say that all of the musicians that I put together, including the orchestra that I started when I was in my 20s, they were all incredibly supportive of what I was doing and very generous with their criticism, constructive criticism. When you do this, we don't know how to follow you, or when you speak, when you apologize, it doesn't help us, these kinds of things that were extremely instructive in the development of not only my conducting technique, but my interactive technique with a large group of people.
Mm. What's the best and the worst in your job? I guess one answer might be the orchestras, but that might be too simple.
No, I don't. Yes, in a way, of course, but I think the best, the best in a way is the orchestra, of course, as you say. The best is the music, of course. That when you're in the throes of a Mahler symphony and everyone is engaged and on the same page, and you just feel the energy of the audience as well. There's nothing better than that. And I would say the worst about this career really is the traveling and having to be away from home for such long periods of time. I would say that's the most, to try to find a balance. I don't think there is such a thing really in this career, but I'm still struggling to find that balance.
I found another story about your early years. I don't know whether that's true, but your father is supposed to have given you a box full of batons for practicing, because you were told by your violin teacher, girls don't conduct. And for making this up, for correcting this and making you feel better, he gave you a box of batons to practice and to show your violin teacher that she might be wrong.
Yeah, he did that, and I think that spoke volumes about him and about his support of me. It was a very, quiet but powerful gesture on his part. And as soon as I opened that box at the breakfast table, I said, "Oh, okay. I know I have their support." I mean, I knew that already, but that solidified it.
Was it hard saying goodbye to the violin for good after a certain period of time and just changing your profession and putting the violin back in the box and saying, "Okay, this is it. I'm gone now. I'm doing something else"?
It wasn't an overnight decision. It's not one day I just stopped playing. It was a gradual, I kept playing some jazz and a little bit with my swing band still. And, I kept doing a few things, a couple special appearances here and there, chamber music. But, as I became busier and busier, I just didn't have the time to invest in practicing enough to meet the standard that I had achieved. And so it was more gradual. And then eventually I loaned my violin to a colleague. And that was really what sort of turned the corner for me. And I was so happy to have her playing on it that I said, "Okay, it's good. It's all you now."
Okay. Whenever I talk to conductors, they always say, when we come to this topic, they always say that orchestras could do so much without conductors, but they shouldn't. So what do you think is your main job, since you're sort of unnecessary in a way?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, of course, on the repertoire and the size of the orchestra and all kinds of things, how needed and essential you are. But I think um, it's a little bit like saying, if we bring a group of wonderful actors together and we show them a play, they could each act their role, but how would the play hang together? What would be the vision? And without, I think, someone overseeing the bigger vision on behalf of the composer, I think it's very hard to make a convincing and compelling and interpretive experience for the listener. So I would say that that's my primary role, is to be the messenger for the composer and to get that sort of story, that narrative across convincingly so the musicians come on board with it. Whether they need a conductor for the tempo or ensemble, depends, of course, on how big the piece is and what the complexity of it. But I think the conductor's role, besides being the advocate for the composer, is to try to create a landscape where the musicians can be the best bring the best of themselves forward. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Mm. Does someone in your career stage still have idols, or is it much nicer to be an idol yourself? Or are you still visiting concerts and sitting there completely surprised and blown away by whatever someone else is doing on stage? Or is this something you don't experience at all?
Oh, I think it's a combination of all of those things. I love going to concerts, especially when I'm in London, or Vienna is a wonderful place as well. And, I'm always surprised in a concert, whether it's by the actual music, which, takes my breath away, or by a choice that a conductor has made. And I think that I hope I never lose that, enjoyment of what music can do for us as human beings. As far as idols go, I had the biggest idol ever, so I think I'm over it now. And but he's still with me. Bernstein is. I feel his presence always, and I'm very close with his children. So it feels that we still have a connection there, and I think it's a mixed bag always to have an idol or to be an idol, and it's a big responsibility. So I try, for anyone who idolizes me, I try to at least come up to their hopes and expectations, if I need them.
There's a Netflix movie coming up about Bernstein's life. Are you anxious to see this, or afraid to see what they've made out of his life?
You mean the one with Bradley Cooper?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, Bradley has become a good friend, and so I'm sort of watching it as it's being made, which is really fun. He's doing an incredible job in his role. He's taken it so, I mean, seriously isn't the right word, but I think it's a labor of love for him. And at least from what I've seen, the photos he sends every day, it looks beautiful. Looks fantastic. So let's see.
I've just seen one picture which has become quite famous, where he's wearing a white shirt and looking exactly like Bernstein looked in this age, and I was totally amazed because of the optical appearance, which was so close to the original. And is he actually asking you for advice and asking, is it okay if we do it like this, or should we do it something else?
No, I'm not consulting in any official capacity. We're just friends.
I see.
And it's but what I love is when I see him holding the cigarette, of course, but he has, he's paid so much attention to watching Bernstein that it's exactly the way Bernstein held the cigarette. Everyone holds something, a pen or a pencil or cigarette differently. And so I can see the care he's taken. And, he'll occasionally ask me questions related to, the length of Bernstein's batons and why did he change, things like this, which I don't really know the answers to, but I can speculate. But it's fun to watch, just as a colleague and a friend, just to watch the process happening. And of course, his marriage to Felicia was extremely passionate and volatile and conflicted. And so I think it lends itself to a wonderful film. So, fingers crossed, or Daumen.
Mm. I can still remember there's this famous scene that took place here at Schleswig-Holstein Music Festival where he did all these rehearsals with the youth orchestra. And I can still remember that it's on the documentary as well, where he rehearsed, all young conductors rehearsed. I think it's been a Sibelius symphony. And one of those guys ran completely out of luck and waved around and didn't know what to do. And Bernstein stood there and with his cigarette and his towel over his shoulder, and he came to him and told him, do this, do that. He conducted with one hand, smoked with the other hand, and all of a sudden, everything worked. And the young conductor was so amazed he couldn't believe his eyes because it was pure magic. All of a sudden, someone else stepping up on the podium, and everything worked out, and it was pure magic. And you have no idea how he did it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, of course, that is really part of Bernstein's magic. And that's where I met him. I mean, that's where I really met him the first time, was at Schleswig-Holstein. Mm. And there's a very, very sweet, probably 1 minute clip of him working with me. So that was a very important festival and location for him. And I thought he made magic happen there often.
If I had been in your shoes, I would have died after 2 minutes, I guess, just being in the same room.
Yes, of course. I mean, that was the trick, right? To try to remain calm and collected and not completely lose, freak out around him, because it was such an exaggerated and monumental experience to be near him.
When are you more dangerous as a conductor? When you're getting loud in rehearsal, or when you're getting silent and just hardly speaking anything at all? When does an orchestra have to know, oh, we're doing something really wrong?
I'm not a big screaming person in life in general. But I think when I get very serious, it's serious. Knows, very serious, very serious, like, okay, we have to talk. We need to talk, that kind of thing. And so they know then, I think. But I do try to throw a really healthy fit, once every year or two, because it's important to let loose sometimes. And especially on behalf of the musicians, I think those have been my most effective and heartfelt, tantrums when the musicians are being abused in some way, and I'm not going to stand for it. So I think it's good to throw a fit as a conductor now and then, or as a leader, I should say. Yeah.
But you're getting back to normal pretty soon, I hope.
Yes. It's a brief sojourn.
What's more fun for you, conducting a tiny Haydn symphony or one of those huge Mahler symphonies?
Oh, I mean, the conductor disease is alive and well with me, and bigger is always better. I mean, Mahler 8, love it, love doing it. I actually staged the second half of it. I think that there's a joy, of course, in a small Haydn symphony, but the orchestra doesn't really need you as much as they need you in a Mahler 8. And I think during COVID, we actually were needed a little bit more because of all the distancing. So I think conductors felt, oh, okay, we're back to being needed.
Hmm. If you were to program an orchestra concert and you were a guy leading a symphony hall, which repertoire would you pick to engage you? I mean, what are you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you're best in? What should be?
Oh, for me
Yes.
personally.
Yes.
Oh, I think probably. I think first and foremost, anything highly rhythmic is good for me. Sakura, or if we're going with standard repertoire. Then I would say something from the Romantic period, maybe late Romantic period, maybe a Strauss tone poem or Rachmaninoff symphonic dances, something like that. And then probably something new. I like, and I think I'm pretty good with new music. I mean, of course, it depends what it is, but something interesting and intriguing and of today. I like those bridges, building the bridge for the listener backward, through sounds of our own time.
Am I wrong, or are you more of a concert and less an opera conductor?
No, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right. I I love opera, and I enjoy doing opera in concert and sort of semi-staged. But for me, the process of putting together operas, it really moves too slowly for me.
Mm-hmm.
6 weeks of watching the paint dry and those kinds of things. I get too anxious. I really need to move faster in life, because that's just who I am. And so, opera in concert is a lot of fun for me, and it's got its own challenges. Excuse me, but it, you can get to the music faster.
Mm-hmm. I found a nice quote about you written by the Washington Post in 21. If conductor Marin Alsop's done it, it's probably because someone told her she couldn't. So you really seem to be stubborn in a way.
Yeah, I would say you're right. I'm very stubborn.
How does this
Very
show
stubborn.
in your daily life, in your daily job life?
Well, it shows a tenacity, and I'm not easily discouraged. Also, I don't take things horribly seriously. You have to have a good sense of humor to have a stubborn approach to life, because sometimes you think, why am I doing this? Am I crazy? And then you can laugh at yourself. But I think being stubborn and maybe being tenacious is a better way of putting it. It's an important quality, because every day, as artists, we have to motivate ourselves to be involved and study and think and dream. And some days you don't feel like it, but that's part of this great privilege of what we do. So I'm always tenacious about all of those things, studying including.
Mm-hmm. If you look at if I look at your biography, there's so many first-time things in there, which is nice. But wouldn't it be nicer if you'd be the second woman or the third woman to do something, because it would be quite normal then? But you've always been the maverick, going where no one's gone before, where no woman has gone before, and it's always this. She's been the first here. She's been the first there. I think it's quite unnerving.
It is a little bit tiring, I think, and I'm sure quite annoying. But I mean, I didn't set out to be the first to do anything. It just, these are merely conditional facts. They're not really any kind of achievement. It's just statement of fact. I think for me, the most important thing is to see the many women finally who are being given opportunities and seeing them succeed. And I started a fellowship for women conductors 20 years ago now. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary. And the 30 recipients are doing so well, and watching their success now. And often they are also the first to do different things. That gives me great joy.
I don't know. I'm don't get this wrong, but there have been 4 big roadblocks standing in your way in your career at the same time. In a way, you were young, you were an American, you are a woman, and you are a lesbian. So there's 4 reasons for many men to say no, thank you. Next.
Well, I think there are probably many more than those 4. Oh gosh, I'm sure there are many more. Yeah, I mean, the young part, sadly, is gone.
That's relative.
But now I have the new part, which is the older woman, which is even worse.
Even worse. Oh,
even
sorry.
Worse for women. No, that's all right. But now I have a new challenge to try to overcome, or at least address. And I think being American has been interesting. When you look at our major orchestras, there's no American leading any of them. So that's sort of an interesting sort of throwback. And then I think, being a woman, maybe now it's finally an advantage, but I'm always going to be the first woman. So there's some kind of weight that I have to carry for that. And being gay is sort of, again, another factual, and it seemed popular for a second, but of course, now that the United States has decided to go back to the Victorian days, I'm not sure how well it's going to go.
What happens when someone calls you maestro? Because some conductors can't stand the word maestro. How about you and maestro?
I prefer that to ma'am. Sometimes I was recently at a big hall in the States, and the head of the stage crew kept calling me ma'am, and I finally said, look, you may call me maestro, but not ma'am. So, I don't mind at all. Maestro, maestra is fine.
Okay. One of the toughest periods in your career was the time before you actually came to Baltimore. Because if it's wrong, if it's right, what I've read is that the orchestra did definitely not want you, and they tried everything in their power to stop you coming there. And nevertheless, you persevered, and you stayed for 14 years, and you convinced them. And I wondered, what did you do? How did you bribe them, convince them, teach them? I have no idea what you actually did to convince about, I guess, 100 or even more people that they were wrong and you are right.
Well, I mean, it's important to know that it wasn't really the whole orchestra. It's just a few people who were leading
one.
Well, the ones that seem to have the big influence. But I had guest conducted the orchestra several times, and it was great. It was a good relationship. So I knew that wasn't really their deep feeling. That I knew that we had a good rapport and that we could do things. But I also realized that they were reacting not to me, because they didn't know me. They were reacting to some perception that they had of me, or of a woman leading them, or of an American leading. I don't know what it was. There was a lot of internal strife at the Baltimore Symphony between the musicians and the management and the board. It was a very unhealthy and dysfunctional institution, which is what it showed me immediately. So I had a very clear vision. I mean, I didn't know why all this was happening, but I could see that this was an organization that needed some kind of healing and fast. And I went to the musicians and before I signed my first contract, and I said, I'm not going to take this job unless we can find a place to work together, obviously, and I laid out a plan for them. It was very brief, but that addressed some of the issues of audience. Their audience had dropped way down. They weren't really connected to the community. They were $16 million in debt. They hadn't made a recording in a decade. And I just sort of went through these things and said, this is what I can bring. And this is my vision, but I won't sign it unless I have your support. And so that's how we started. And they said, of course, we support you. And I decided that I couldn't make them like me. I mean, whatever like means, but I could try to help heal them. And I decided that the best healing tool would be success, because they hadn't had much success recently. And so I tried to create successful opportunities for them, as many as I could. I tried to connect them to the community. The audiences started growing. We started making recordings. We went on European tours, trying to build the structure and the health of the organization. My main goal was to try to leave a culture of joy instead of a culture of real dissension and antagonism. And I don't know if I succeeded, but I certainly tried.
Did any of these tribe elders come up to you and actually say, we're sorry, we were wrong?
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, in their own ways, of course. Yes. And many became my good friends. And many are still there. But during my tenure, which I think is at least tied for the longest tenure of any music director at the orchestra, almost 40% of the orchestra turned over, either retired or left. And so 40% of the orchestra musicians were hired by me. So it's a different vibe. But those people still, some of those people are still there and are my good friends. We're friendly. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. When I read about this story, I thought, or the idea came up to ask whether, is it something that you never do as a conductor? You never call an orchestra and tell them, if something's free in the next years, let me know. I'm good to go. I'd like to come. Is this the worst you can do, showing interest for an orchestra? Did you ever hear of somebody doing this? Because I always feel
you mean like I'd like to be your music director?
Yes.
I'm sorry, somebody's working outside.
Conductors always have to be asked. At least feels like that to me.
Oh, but it's sort of. I would say that it's a little bit of that same thing with relationships. When you can't have someone, they feel much more desirable, right? That's sort of not a very healthy way to live, I don't think. But I think that's probably the case. And the less accessible and available one is, the more interest there is. But who knows? All of these kinds of games are a little bit beyond my capacity as a human being. I don't have energy for that stuff. I'm much more interested in trying to be effective wherever I am.
So you never, in your early years, called up in orchestras and told them, "Let me know. Here's my number. Just let me know."
I don't. I certainly never did. My manager might have done that a couple times, but I don't think. It's for me. It's all worked out great, and I couldn't be happier than I am now.
Okay, since you're the second person I've ever talked to coming from or living in Baltimore. The first one was David Simon, the author of The Wire.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's amazing. And I didn't have much time to talk to him, but you're living there and we have more time to talk. So is it really like it's been in The Wire, or did things change in Baltimore?
I would say that sadly, probably the basic outline from The Wire still persists. A lot of the kids in my the Orchids program that I started at the Baltimore Symphony come from neighborhoods where you see all the vacant buildings and all the boarded up places. And many of them come from backgrounds of extraordinary violence, lots of gun violence. And it's a city that desperately needs love and attention. And the flip side of that is that, you can make a difference here, where sometimes in a big city it's hard to make a difference. But in Baltimore, I think you can make a difference. And the city is also a wonderful place because it's a city, but it feels a little bit like a smaller town. People are very connected, all the different communities, and they try to help each other. That's not something you saw in The Wire too much, but I think you could see that it's a city that tries hard.
Mm. I'm also asking because I've read about a project you've done there in Baltimore, doing Beethoven 9 without the final choir, but with a rap artist called Wordsmith. And some US magazine wrote about this, making Beethoven woke. And I thought how this was accepted and seen in Baltimore. Was it something that everybody thought, oh, now she's completely bonkers, or was it a success? Or what's it in?
I knew when the classical music press said, she's completely gone off the deep end, then I knew I was on the right path. But this was part of a much bigger project that is still going on, actually, a global ode to joy. And in partnership with Carnegie Hall, I've had 9 texts globally written, new texts. And in the United States, Tracy K. Smith, the former U.S. poet laureate, did a text. And also for Baltimore, Wordsmith, who's an artist in residence with the Baltimore Symphony and a good friend and a super, super talented, really talented artist. And I think having a text that came from a Baltimore native and someone that lives here, and a text that really tried to address inequalities. And, the idea was not to redo Beethoven's or Schiller's text, but rather to update it with the same themes of joy, of tolerance, of unity, of coming together as people. These are the important themes that somehow don't resonate for everyone in the same way when it's sung in German. People love the piece, but they're not really understanding the context of speaking about individuality and freedom and free thinking and what that meant, in the end of the 1700s. I mean, it's a completely different concept then. It's radical. So this was my thinking behind having these new texts done. And the audience loved it, absolutely loved it. And, it's not as though the audience was comprised of, all people from, it was a diverse audience, but it was still our main audience, our main classical audience, and they loved it.
Because I thought if you do this in some German or Austrian city, you might be crucified and everybody'd scream blasphemy and how can she, and is she out of her mind?
Oh,
and this
but I did it in Vienna with a new text.
What were the reactions in Vienna?
Fantastic. They
really
loved it.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so I think we sometimes this museum approach to classical music can put people off. If you let it evolve, and it's like a concert experience. I mean, are we changing the music when we allow people to sit around the orchestra, for example, or if we put things on the screen? No, we're trying to bring it into the 21st century. And something like a reimagining of a text. I mean, I didn't change any of the music. I wouldn't, this to me is sacrosanct. But I think a text that was written 200-300 years ago needs to be rethought so that it feels relevant for today. And that's not taking anything away from the beauty of that original text. It's just people today don't understand the significance necessarily of that text and the text in its time.
So somehow we're back at Bernstein with this, because I somewhere in the back of my flat, I have a box with videos, his young people's concerts, and I guess they're about 70 years old now or 60 years old. And if you watch these performances of him explaining music to children and younger audience, it's still fresh and valid and believable, and it's easygoing, and it's a perfect way to get them into the music. And everybody's right now searching for new ideas, for new concepts for concerts, to get people back into the concert halls and to get a new generation. And I think it might be quite easy. You just have to talk to your audience. But I guess many conductors are really fine with not having to talk to audiences, because there's also already stuck with talking to orchestras and soloists, and that's the least they want to do, talking and explaining what they're doing. And I guess that's more necessary than ever in these days to get the audience back.
I think that I've always enjoyed speaking to the audience, but I think that comes from my days as more of a pop musician, more in my swing band, of talking to the people at the bar, just talking about the tunes. So I always enjoyed speaking to the audience, and my audience in Baltimore said, "Oh, we love it when you talk. Couldn't you tell us more about the standard pieces? The canon." And so I started a series called Off the Cuff, where I would talk about a piece and sort of take it apart, dissect it, using the orchestra to show examples, and then we'd perform the whole piece. And it was a huge hit. I mean, for I guess maybe even the last 10 years, it was one of their most popular series. So people like to know. Everybody wants information.
This might sound silly, but I hope it isn't. But are rehearsals actually fun? Because the fun part of your job is being on stage when there's an audience around. Rehearsing is just like, it's rehearsing. It's not playing. It's not performing. It's rehearsing. You can make mistakes. It doesn't matter. But when you're in front of an audience, you can make them, but you shouldn't. But the better part of your job is when there's an audience around. And the other part, preparing for it, is just preparing. It's like cooking a meal, but not eating it.
Yeah, but I think there's magic in both parts. I think the rehearsing is the hard work. That's the chopping and deciding what ingredients you're going to put in. And, if you do that well, then you have the potential to have a magical outcome. But if you don't do that well, it's very, very difficult to achieve the latter. So I think rehearsing is super important. I think for audiences, it's much more interesting, actually, than the concert itself. How the sausage is made, what goes into doing it. So I always try to invite people who are curious about the symphony to come to a rehearsal and see what you think, see how you enjoy it.
Do you actually enjoy the power of being the conductor? Because what you say shall be done. In some cases it isn't, but more or less people follow what you're saying. But isn't it a sort of danger as well, like getting used to this drug of being the one person in charge?
Luckily, when I come home, my family pays no attention to anything I say. So it's a good balance. But, it's not, for me, it's not that kind of egomaniacal approach. I feel that it's a big responsibility because I have to be the voice for the composer. That's a big responsibility. So I also feel that the musicians are understanding and they're there to make the music vital and compelling and come to life. So I feel that we have a same goal. It's not a power equation for me. It's much more of a collaborative vision to try to bring the composer to life. I'm sure there's some days when it feels good to be listened to, but I don't think that really comes into play for me too much.
What's worse, having to go on a stage or having to leave a stage?
No, both are good. I think there's an excitement to going on the stage, because it has to be, you step into the light, but you really step into the darkness because you don't know what's going to happen exactly. And then it's always important to leave people wanting more, not to overstay your welcome. I try to always stay with an orchestra just long enough so that people still like me. And, there's a sell by date, like a shelf life for conductors. And I think it's important to try to read that and move on at a moment when when you've done what you can and you're not repeating yourself. So, I think there's excitement and sadness to both ends of it.
Is it easy for you to forgive yourself when you've made a mistake? Is it like, what the heck? Nobody's noticed anyway, and tomorrow I'm going to conduct somewhere else, and that's it.
Well, that's your assumption is that I make mistakes.
My mistake. I'm sorry.
So maybe that's where we need to listen. Everybody makes mistakes, but I am fortunate in that I don't often make conducting mistakes. I make other kinds of mistakes all the time, of course, and I think it's important to give yourself the the freedom to make an error and to learn from that. I think mistakes are the best learning tool we have. So while they're painful, I think it's important to really consider them and think them through and understand what happened and why and what you would do differently. So I don't think mistakes are things to just try to sweep under the rug while nobody's looking. I think you have to own your mistakes. I believe in that.
Mm-hmm. Is there a composer of which you are saying, over my dead body, I'm never going to conduct this? I don't want to be in the same room with these music, with these sheet music. I just can't. I don't.
No, I don't think so. No, I try to be open to every experience. Whether I decide, okay, I'm going to go back and conduct everything this composer has ever written, or maybe, okay, that was enough. One piece was enough. But you have to try something in order to, and try to successfully make it come to life and make it part of who you are. I think that's our responsibility as conductors, is not to judge the music so much as to instead to advocate for it.
Christoph von Dohnanyi told me once recently that he is really enjoying sitting at home reading music. So not actually listening to it, but reading it and imagining it. I can't imagine what that's like. I mean, I can imagine what the process is like, looking on a score and seeing what's happening. But actually, the act of getting this music to be played inside of your head must be completely fascinating. Is this something that you really enjoy as well, apart
Yes.
from preparing a concert and just seeing, okay, I'm going to do this, and if this happens, I'm going to do that. But just for the pure joy of it, sitting there and reading music like a book, and
Definitely.
hearing a story like you're seeing a movie when you're reading a book, you're hearing a concerto or a symphony when you're opening the score and just look at the notes, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's music.
Definitely. I mean, that's the biggest joy and the biggest privilege. You know, you get up in the morning and it's like Christmas. You go to your desk and you say, oh, what am I going to open today? And what's good? Oh, look at this and this. You know, I can be on a 10-hour plane ride and it goes by like that, you know, because I'm imagining the score coming to life and the colors so it's you're never lonely. You always have this incredible company.
Mm-hmm. Do you throw away your old scores after doing a concert because you don't want to know what you've done recently, and you always you'd rather start fresh? Or do you have your scores and you take them with you for, I don't know, for decades, because these are the ones that count?
Yeah, I mean, I'm I'm relatively attached to my scores, but you know, after a few decades, they wear thin, and these days it's so great because I can download scores onto my iPad or my computer. So many pieces which I do from memory, you know, I only need a score for reference while I'm traveling. It makes my suitcases much lighter. I like this.
Mm-hmm.
But I generally have the same scores from my early days, and I enjoy, you know, seeing what I had been thinking then, what I had written in. But I don't mark them excessively either. So it's not as though I can't even see the notes through all of my markings. So I'm probably fall somewhere in the middle of all of those things.
I see. Since we have to come to the end, there's two final questions I have. The first one would be, what's the difference between a good and a very good conductor?
I think a very good conductor is always motivated by the composer and the music itself. And I think a very good conductor can create the topology or the geography for the musicians to step out and be the best they can be. And I think a good conductor can, you know, do a decent solid performance. You know, whether it's I would say the difference between good and very good is it's that X factor, right? Whether something it becomes transcendental and changes. You know, when an audience member leaves and says, wow, I'm so glad I came to this concert. It really, I don't know if people ever say this, but it changed my life, or it changed my thinking, or it changed my heart, I think that's a very good conductor.
Mm-hmm. And the last question would be, the longer the career as a conductor, the better your character. Is that true or false?
Well, if you didn't have a very good character to start with, I doubt it's true. But I think if you started with a decent character, it's true. I think you know, when one is young, it's the same for all young people. You know, they think they know everything. And I used to think, oh, experience, experience. Who cares about experience? You know, and of course, as you gain experience, you realize how critical it is, and how much more you know, and how much more you learn, and how much more you respect the wonderful musicians who you know collaborate with you to make these hopefully inspired performances. So I think it's true.
Okay. So we're done. I'm really looking forward to, I have no idea whether you're going to come to Hamburg in the next month or year or the next season with one of your
I was
orchestras.
just there recently, but
yeah, and I missed it. I'm really sorry.
But I'm making a plan to come back. So
okay, so we might be meeting over here as well, and I'm really looking forward. Whichever orchestra you're going to pick, that's fine with me as long as I can see you live here. And
I hope so.
And thank you very much, and enjoy your time over there, and keep safe. And thank you then.
Thank you. Great interview.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Weitere Podcasts vom Hamburger Abendblatt finden Sie auf abendblatt.de/podcast.